Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something I know a lot of you have requested, boosting your English listening skills.
A very popular topic.
It is. So we have this podcast episode, right? And it's got like 15 tips.
15.
Yeah, 15 tips, which is a lot.
It is a lot.
So we're going to dive in and see which ones, maybe are more useful than others. And which ones, will really help you on your journey to better listening.
It sounds like a good plan because there is no, one right way to learn.
Exactly, yeah.
So exploring is definitely key.
Right. And just to give you a quick overview of the tips, they cover a lot of ground, like starting slow, there's shadowing, using context, even immersing yourself in English.
Wow.
Yeah, just reading the list, I was a little overwhelmed.
It's definitely comprehensive, which is a good thing.
It is.
But, you are right. It's a lot to kind of process all at once.
Yeah.
So let's break it down, see which ones might kind of resonate with your learning style.
Perfect. I'm ready to unpack this. All right, so first up is tip 1, and it is start with slow audio content. And I'm actually really relieved they put this one first.
Oh, yeah. Why?
I remember when I first started, trying to improve my listening comprehension, I kind of jumped into some podcasts that were, way too fast.
Yeah.
And it totally backfired. I was so lost. I felt discouraged.
I can see why.
Yeah.
It's like trying to run a marathon with absolutely no training.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, no training whatsoever.
You got to start slow so your brain, can actually get a chance to process the sounds, the structures of the language without getting overwhelmed.
Right. So it's not even just about making it easier to understand. It's about helping me build those foundational skills.
Exactly. Like when you listen to slower audio, you can really hear the individual sounds, like the phonemes.
The phonemes, yeah.
Yes. And how they all come together, to form the words. It also helps you pick up on the rhythm and the intonation, like the music of the language, which is crucial for comprehension.
It's like the foundation, right? Like we were talking about the marathon. You need to build that solid foundation.
Absolutely. It's like building a house,
Oh.
You need that solid foundation before you can start adding all the walls and the roof and everything.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So slow and steady wins the race. I get it. What about this next one? This is tip 2, and it's repeat and shadow. Does shadowing really work? It sounds a little intimidating, to be honest.
It can be incredibly effective, though I understand why it might feel a bit strange at first.
Strange, yeah.
So imagine, you listen to a short audio clip.
Okay.
And then immediately, you try to repeat it, like mimicking the speaker's pronunciation and intonation as closely as possible.
Oh, okay. So I'm basically trying to become their vocal twin.
Yeah, kind of.
I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm ready to channel my inner Shakespearean actor just yet.
It might feel a bit silly at first.
Yeah.
But think of it, as vocal training for your ears and for your tongue.
It really helps you tune in to those very subtle nuances, of pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm that often kind of trip up language learners.
Okay, so it's not just about memorizing the words. It's actually about embodying how they're spoken.
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, you're training your mouth to move in the same way, your voice to rise and fall at the same points. Essentially, mirroring the speaker's delivery.
Okay, so walk me through it. What are the actual steps involved in shadowing? Do I just pick any random audio clip and start repeating like a parrot?
Not exactly. I would say, start with short, simple sentences or even just single words, really focusing on accuracy rather than speed.
Right.
So find an audio clip with, a clear speaker, maybe a news report or, maybe a podcast like this one.
Okay.
Listen to a short segment, pause, and then just try to repeat it, mimicking the speaker's pronunciation and intonation as closely as you can.
Okay, so short clips, clear speaker, focus on accuracy. Got it.
Exactly. But isn't it going to sound really robotic and unnatural at first?
It probably will.
Okay, good.
But that's okay. The goal is to train your ear and your tongue to work together.
Right.
And not to become a perfect sound-alike overnight.
Right.
It's a process.
Yeah.
You'll gradually become more fluid and more natural as you practice.
I'm willing to give it a shot. Maybe I'll, start with something fun like shadowing my favorite English language song.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Speaking of music, tip 9 is listen to music, which I am all for. I've always found that music helps me learn new words and phrases, especially slang and colloquialisms. Is there actually any science behind this?
There's something powerful about learning through music. The rhythm, the melody, the emotional engagement, it all works together, to create this deeper learning experience.
Yeah.
Studies have shown that music can activate different parts of the brain,
Oh, wow.
enhancing memory and retention.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And plus, when you actually enjoy what you're listening to, you're more likely to stick with it.
Exactly. It's about, finding ways to make learning enjoyable and engaging, and music does that beautifully. It exposes you to authentic language,
Right.
different accents, and even cultural nuances. It's like a fun, sneaky way to absorb the language.
It is. Okay. I'm sold on music. What about tip 5? It is focus on context, not perfection. This one speaks to me because I have a confession. I sometimes get so hung up on understanding every single word that I completely miss the big picture.
I understand that completely. It's a very common trap, especially for those of us, who love language and we want to master every single nuance.
Right.
But the truth is, you don't need to catch every single word to understand the message.
Okay.
Our brains are actually incredibly good at filling in those gaps using context clues.
Oh, interesting. So it's like solving a puzzle, like using the pieces I do understand to figure out the ones that I don't.
Exactly. Think about it. In real-life conversations, we rarely hear every word perfectly.
Right?
There's background noise. There's people talking over each other. Sometimes we just zone out for a second.
Yeah.
But we still manage to follow along because our brains are constantly using those context clues.
Right.
Like the situation, the speaker's body language, our own background knowledge to kind of fill in those blanks.
I guess I never really thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. Even in my, native language, I don't always catch every single word. So how can I get better at, using context clues to understand English?
It takes practice. Just start by focusing on the overall meaning,
Okay.
of what you're listening to. Like, what is the speaker's main point? What are the key ideas? Don't worry too much about those individual words that you might miss.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the speaker's tone of voice, their facial expressions, if you can see them, and just the overall context of the situation.
So it's almost like I'm becoming a detective.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Looking for clues to, crack the code of the conversation.
Exactly. It's about training your brain to be more of an active listener, not just a passive recipient of words. And as you become more comfortable with this, you'll find that you understand more than you think you do, even if you miss, a few words here and there.
That's reassuring. It takes some of the pressure off,
It should. Remember, the goal is to become a fluent and confident listener, not a walking dictionary.
Right. Okay. I'm ready to embrace my inner detective. Now, this next tip, it's vary your listening sources. And this one reminds me of this funny story. I was traveling in Scotland, and someone asked me if I wanted a wee dram. And I had absolutely no idea what they were talking about.
Oh, what did you think they were offering you?
I pictured, honestly, like a tiny drum.
Well, wee drum.
Like a little souvenir, to take home with me.
Oh, that's great.
And it turned out they were offering me a small glass of whiskey. The Scottish accent and vocabulary just threw me for a loop.
That's hilarious. But it also highlights a very crucial point.
Yeah.
Different accents and dialects can be, a real challenge.
They can, yeah.
Even for experienced English learners.
Absolutely. It's like almost learning a whole new language.
Right.
Within a language.
It can be incredibly daunting.
It can.
But instead of seeing it as a barrier, we can actually reframe it as a fantastic opportunity.
Okay.
By exposing yourself to a variety of accents, you're essentially giving your ears a workout.
A workout, okay.
You're making them more flexible and more adaptable.
It's like building muscle memory, but for my ears.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's globalized world, that skill is incredibly valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to understand different accents, it opens up, communication channels and makes you a more effective communicator in all sorts of situations.
Okay, it's starting to see the light. Accents. Challenge accepted. So what are some good ways to, expose myself to a wider range of accents?
That's a great question. And a perfect segue into our next segment. We'll be back after a quick break to discuss specific strategies for finding, diverse listening materials from podcasts to movies to even online language exchange programs. Stay tuned.
Awesome. And we are back ready to explore even more tips for improving your English listening skills.
Yeah.
So before the break, you were talking about the importance of varying those listening sources.
Yes.
And you mentioned some strategies for finding, diverse materials.
Right. The more diverse your listening input,
Yeah.
the more adaptable your ear becomes.
Makes sense.
So let's dive into some specific resources.
Perfect. I'm all ears.
Well, you've already mentioned music, which is a fantastic starting point.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many other options.
Yeah.
Think about your interests. Do you love movies, documentaries, true crime podcasts?
Oh, I'm a huge fan of historical documentaries. There's something about hearing those stories brought to life,
That's a great example. You could try watching documentaries in English.
Okay.
Maybe even ones about familiar historical events.
Right.
You'll already have some context,
Yeah.
which can make it easier to follow along.
Yeah.
Even if the language is, challenging at times.
That's a good idea. I could even try, turning on English subtitles at first if I need a little extra support.
Absolutely. Subtitles can be a really useful tool,
Yeah.
especially when you're starting out.
Mm-hmm.
You can even, challenge yourself to gradually reduce your reliance on them.
Okay.
Start with English subtitles, then maybe switch to subtitles in your native language,
Right.
and eventually, try watching without any subtitles at all.
It's like training wheels for my ears.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Like that. And speaking of training, tip 8 suggests using listening apps.
Oh, the apps?
Yeah, the apps. There are tons of options out there,
So many.
each with its own, strengths and weaknesses.
I've dabbled in Duolingo before. It's fun for vocabulary and grammar, but does it really help with listening comprehension?
Duolingo is a great starting point.
Okay.
But for more focused listening practice, you might want to explore apps like LSA
ALSA.
or Pimsleur.
Okay.
LSA is amazing for pronunciation.
Oh,
It uses AI-powered speech recognition to analyze your pronunciation
wow.
and give you, real-time feedback.
That sounds incredible. Like having a personal pronunciation coach, in my pocket.
Exactly. Pimsleur, on the other hand,
Okay.
focuses on audio-based learning through a spaced repetition method.
Okay.
It's designed to help you memorize new words and phrases
Right.
through repeated exposure and active recall.
So many apps, so little time. It sounds like it's worth trying out a few
Yeah.
to see which ones kind of fit my learning style the best.
Absolutely. And don't forget about the power of real-life conversations. Tip 4, engage with real-life conversations. It might seem daunting at first,
Yeah,
but it's where you truly put your listening skills to the test.
I can see that. But how do I find opportunities for real life conversations in English if I'm not, living in an English speaking country?
There are actually tons of options. Online language exchange platforms
Okay.
and communities are fantastic resources.
Mm.
Websites and apps like Candom and HelloTalk connect you with native English speakers from around the world
Ooh.
who are learning your native language.
Oh, that's awesome. So we can help each other out.
Exactly. It's a win-win situation. You get to practice your English listening and speaking skills, and they get to practice your native language. Plus, it's a great way to make new friends and learn about different cultures.
Okay, that's definitely going on my list. I'm starting to feel more confident already, just knowing there are so many resources available. What about tip 6? This is active listening. What exactly does that involve? Is it different from just listening?
It absolutely is. Passive listening is like letting the sounds kind of wash over you, which can be relaxing, but it's not the most effective way to learn. Active listening, on the other hand, is about engaging with the material in a more deliberate and intentional way.
So instead of just letting the words go in one ear and out the other, I need to be more present.
That's a great way to put it. Think of it like a conversation with the audio.
Okay.
As you're listening, ask yourself questions. What are the key points? What are the main arguments? What new vocabulary or phrases am I hearing?
So maybe jotting down notes or key phrases as I'm listening.
That's a great strategy. You could also try pausing the audio and summarizing what you've just heard in your own words, either aloud or in writing. It forces you to process the information more deeply.
So it's all about turning passive listening into an active learning experience. I like that.
And don't forget about tip 10, break it down. If you're feeling overwhelmed by a longer audio clip, don't be afraid to chunk it up.
Yeah.
Listen to a smaller segment, pause, process it, maybe take some notes, and then move on to the next section.
It's like eating an elephant one bite at a time, right?
Exactly.
Less intimidating that way.
And as you conquer each small chunk, You build momentum and confidence.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that next time I'm tackling, like, a challenging podcast or a lecture or something.
And speaking of tackling challenges,
Yeah.
tip 12 suggests watching interviews and TED Talks.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely found those helpful in the past. But what makes them particularly effective for language learning?
Well, interviews and TED Talks expose you to a wide range of speaking styles and vocabulary, both formal and informal.
Okay.
You'll hear people using idiomatic expressions, phrasal verbs, and all sorts of real-world language that you might not find in a textbook.
Plus, they're usually on interesting topics, so it doesn't feel like a chore to watch them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that genuine interest makes a huge difference.
Right.
When you're engaged and entertained, you're more likely to absorb the language naturally.
Now, I have a confession. I'm not a big fan of tests. But tip 13, test yourself regularly, kind of makes me wonder if I should reconsider.
Tests can be a valuable tool.
Okay.
Even if you don't love them, think of them as a way to, gauge your progress
Okay.
and identify areas where you need more practice.
Mm-hmm.
There are tons of free resources available online, like the BBC Learning English website and ESL Lab, which offer listening quizzes, comprehension exercises, and even full-blown listening tests.
It's like having a personalized progress report for my listening skills.
Exactly. And it can be really motivating, to see how far you've come
Yeah.
and identify specific areas to focus on.
Okay, I'm starting to see the value in testing myself.
Yeah.
Maybe not every day, but
Mhm.
definitely as a way to track my progress and stay motivated.
And remember, it's not about getting a perfect score. It's about using those tests as a learning tool.
Right.
Embrace the mistakes, learn from them, and keep moving forward.
Okay, I think I can handle that. We've covered a lot of ground here. Is there anything we missed?
Let's see. We've talked about starting slow, shadowing, active listening, varying your sources, using apps, embracing real-life conversations, testing yourself.
And of course, my personal favorite, listening to music.
Yes. How could we forget? It seems like we've covered the most impactful tips for building those English listening muscles.
Muscles, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really does feel like a workout for my ears.
And just like any workout, consistency is key. Which brings us to one of the most important tips of all, and one that's often overlooked. It's less about, a specific technique and more about a mindset,
Okay.
patience and persistence.
Right.
It's tip 14.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's the foundation for all the other strategies that we've discussed.
I can see that. It's easy to get discouraged, when you don't see results right away.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I've definitely been there.
Completely normal.
Yeah.
Language learning is a journey, not a sprint. There will be days when you feel like you're making amazing progress and others where you feel totally stuck.
Mm-hmm.
The key is to just keep going, even when it gets tough.
Easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah.
Any advice on how to, stay motivated when those inevitable plateaus hit?
One thing that helps me is focusing on the small wins.
Okay.
Did you understand a bit more of a podcast today than you did last week?
Yeah.
Were you able to follow, conversation in English a little bit more easily? Those little victories, they add up over time.
That's a good point. It's easy to get fixated on that end goal, like fluency,
Right.
and forget to celebrate those incremental steps along the way.
Exactly.
So patience, persistence, and celebrating those small wins.
Got it. Now we only have one tip left. Tip 15. Immerse yourself in English. It seems like a pretty common piece of advice, but isn't it a bit difficult if you don't live in an English-speaking country?
It might seem that way,
Yeah.
but it's actually more achievable than you might think.
Immersion doesn't necessarily mean, packing your bags and moving across the world. It's about creating an English-speaking environment in your own life, no matter where you live.
Okay, so what does that actually look like? Give me some practical ideas.
Think about, all the things you do in your native language,
Mm-hmm.
and consider how you can kind of switch some of them over to English.
Okay.
For example, change the language settings on your phone and computer.
Right.
Start following English-speaking creators on social media.
Yeah?
Watch movies and TV shows in English, even if you need subtitles at first.
And don't forget podcasts. Hopefully this one counts.
Absolutely. Podcasts are a fantastic way to immerse yourself in, authentic spoken English, covering a wide range of topics and accents. And don't underestimate the power of audiobooks. Listening to a story in English, while you commute or do chores is a great way to make the language a part of your daily routine. The key is to make English a regular part of your life, not just something you study in a textbook.
I love that. It's like weaving English into the fabric of my day. It reminds me of something we talked about earlier. Tip 11, listen daily. Even just like 10 or 15 minutes each day can make a big difference over time.
Consistency is key. It's like working out a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. And don't worry if you can't always, carve out a huge chunk of time.
Right.
Even, short bursts of focused listening throughout the day can be incredibly beneficial.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered all 15 tips, and I feel like I have like a much clearer understanding of how to approach English listening.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into these strategies with you.
Before we wrap up, any final words of wisdom for our listener who is embarking on their own listening adventure?
Here's a thought-provoking question to ponder. Think about your daily routine and your personal interests, right? How can you weave English listening into those existing structures and passions? Can you listen to an English podcast while you walk the dog? Can you watch a TED Talk on a topic that, really fascinates you? Get creative, find what sparks your curiosity, and remember, the most effective learning happens when you're genuinely engaged and enjoying the process.
That's a wonderful reminder. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and happy listening.